Hello! Hi, everybody, and welcome once again to another episode of Can I Come Over? We are your hosts, Renata,
Julia.
And Nicole.
and we're so happy to see you again. Welcome back, guys.
Welcome back.
So, today it's all about 21 and 25. 2025, sorry, not 25. Well, I mean, 25th year, it's fine.
Yeah.
But before we get into it, guys, this week's obsession. Always, there's always gonna be this. This time around, there's a bit of a theme.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Unintentionally.
Unintentional theme. But it's quite nice. My obsession for this week is the book, All About Love by Bell Hooks. I don't know if you guys have read it. If you have, incredible. If you haven't, I highly recommend it. Bell Hooks has such incredible work, but it's a book of introspection and self-help. As the title says, it's all about love. I highly recommend it. You're gonna have a lot of oh my god moments, and it can be a bit of a difficult read at times because it forces you to be and to put yourself in a lot of uncomfortable positions and think about a lot of uncomfortable things in your life. Establish meaning and definitions for love, which can get very tricky when there's a lot of uncertainty about it, but highly recommend all about love and a lot of other of her works. So that's my obsession for this week.
Love.
Mine is yet another book. It's called The Puppy War by R.F. Kuang, I think is how you say it. A great book. I am halfway down, so it literally is my current obsession. I am halfway down the book. I have read, I think, like 12 or 13 of 26 chapters. And it is quite an interesting fantasy book. It's been recommended. I think I've always seen it in like top 5 fantasy books you should read, but I've never gotten around to reading it. And then recently, a friend influenced me to pick it up. And I did start reading it, and I quite like it so far. It's really nice world building, interesting characters. But again, it is a classic first book of a fantasy series, so it is kind of like hard to get into. Regardless, a great book and a great read. I would highly recommend.
Mine is a book by Harumi Murakami, and it's Blind Willow, Sleeping Woman. And it's a collection of short stories. And I've gone through I think 6 or 7 of them by now. And they're so short and they are so interesting. And almost all of them leaves you just not necessarily hanging, but hanging in thought. All of them, you're thinking about what happened in the story, and you might even be reflecting on your life in some of them. And most of them have no correlation to the other, but it still leaves you with a very familiar emotion, each and every single one of them. It's quite interesting. These are our obsessions, an unintentional theme of just having books this time, but I guess we can get into...
Let's start getting into it. Let's talk all about being 21 in 2025. I think it's at this point, Jovi and I are on the boat. Nicole's about to get in there. She's
in 4 months.
4 months. But it's very interesting to see because even when we're talking, when I talk to my mom about it or to my dad, it's a completely different perspective. And I think it's all comes with a lot of challenges. Every single stage of our life is defined by a new set of challenges. I remember when I was little, I was scared of passing 3rd grade and how good am I going to do it, and then going into middle school and high school and then university, and now we're starting to step out of university. And going into our 20s brought a lot of challenges as well. It's a big number. You're on the 2nd floor, as we say in Mexico. You're like, welcome to the 2nd floor. And especially for people that decide to kind of move abroad, it brings a lot of loneliness. It's this really big, heavy weight of it's a new age and it's scary. And I think it's even funny because to our parents it might seem almost absurd. Like, ah, you're only 20.
Mm-hmm.
Ah, you're only this. You're so young. You have a whole life ahead of you. But to us, that's our whole life. This is what we're experiencing right now. And turning 20 and 21 specifically, because that's such a big legal number in a lot of different parts of the world. And your friendships change because your life situation changes, your priorities change, your routine changes. You might be going into university or into a job, or you might be trying to find yourself in this new stage of your life. And the other day, this is completely, well, not completely unrelated, it's related, but it was so interesting to see. The other day, I saw a TikTok, which will link down below, but it was talking about a girl, and she goes, "It's so funny walking into a cafe and seeing all the people in their 20s." I sent it to you guys.
And I said, "Oh, you want to stab the knife and twist it?"
Yeah, because it's it goes on to talk about a person who's 23 and starting their new job, and a couple who's 24 and having their first kid on their way up. Another guy who's 29 and who decided to start over. It's a really confusing time, and I think there's also this extreme pressure, not necessarily from our parents. Sometimes it's just internalized from the people that we surround ourselves by, to be financially independent as well. The pressure that comes with wanting to be financially independent, to have this freedom that is so addicting to have, especially when you're entering your 20s, that, oh, now I can do this by myself and this by myself and this by myself. And there's also another side of the coin. It comes with a lot of responsibility. We moved abroad, and so the three of us have very mixed experiences with bureaucratic systems and having to deal with a lot of big kid things. In Spanish we say de adulto pequeño, which means like a little adult. Like, oh guys, I'm doing little adult things, where it's going to have your doing your first visa application by yourself, applying for your first bank account.
That reminds me of like how there's the saying or the idea that you're just like at 20, you're only a 2-year-old adult.
Yes.
Which makes a lot of sense. You've only been an adult for 2 years, so you don't have to know everything.
I think it's a really tame way to put it in that aspect. But all of these things can be very overwhelming at times.
Yeah.
And having to deal with, again, if you guys haven't seen last week's episode, you should totally check it out. Adult friendships and how those come about, and how do you cling on to friendships and let go of them and manage them and prioritize them as well. Friendships are no longer a luxury. Like, they're no longer a given, they're a luxury, right? And then there's the other factor, going back to that TikTok. Everyone's at different stages of their lives. Everyone's at different points. You're at a different journey with yourself, with others. There's people who are going into university all over again, who are doing their masters, who are graduating, who are dropping out. There's people who decided to not go to uni or couldn't have the opportunity to do it. They had to prioritize other things, who are deciding to focus on creative passions, or who have their life figured out or written out for them, who are rebelling against it. And there's others who are just starting to figure things out, or who are completely lost. And because there's so many mixed perspectives on the whole matter, there's this main thing of comparison. We compare ourselves all the time because we've been conditioned to do it one way or another through school. Who's got the best grades? Who's doing the best academically? Who's doing the best athletically, in sports, in arts? We're conditioned, and we're so used to this constant comparison and want and need to become a better version of ourselves, that when you're put in this plane of possibilities, it can be very confusing, because you're like, what do we do? And one thing that we always talk about, and I think it's a really good question to ask, is, think of an artist, a writer, a singer, an actor, does not matter. Think of them and someone who is your same age, and how did it feel knowing that they had achieved so much in so little? And the one person that always comes to mind is
Millie
Millie
Bobby
Bobby
Brown.
Brown.
Love
Oh
her.
my god.
Icon.
No
But
words.
no hatred towards this woman.
Yeah, she's amazing.
She's an actress. She's an entrepreneur. She's now
A wife.
a
Married.
wife. She has goats and a
Goats.
farm and a shelter. That's the part that all the good vibes. No hatred.
Yes.
Yeah.
No evil eye. It's almost so hurtful to see. It's because you put yourself down of, oh, I'm not good enough, or oh, I'm not doing enough, or oh, I'm not doing this, oh, I'm not doing that. And I think it's always this, it feels like a race. It feels like you have to, or you could be doing so much more. And again, it could be because we're either conditioned to, our parents tell us to, our friends tell us to, our family may tell us, or we just have this internalized sense of guilt.
Yeah.
Of, I must be better, I must do better, I must achieve this, I must have this by this time, and all that sort of stuff. But those are, I don't want to say myths because they're real. They're things that we feel and we experience. But they're very unrealistic expectations.
Yeah.
Extremely unrealistic.
Extremely unrealistic. And you mentioned myths. And I think it's so important to like address this because we go into adulthood, or we think of adulthood with certain expectations and myths in our head. And there's a couple that I've like pointed out or like note down. And you know, we all go into adulthood with either like one or multiple, or I doubt that there's anyone who goes into adulthood with zero myths in their head.
Mm-hmm.
But and then reality kicks in and it doesn't work out as you planned because you had all these expectations based off of these myths. And then you're freaking out and you're confused and don't know what to do. But I would like to bring up like, you know, 3 main like most common myths that I've seen and that I think we can all like agree that these are some things that we've believed or we were oblivious to. And the first one is that you'll have everything figured out when you're graduating.
Oopsie.
The silence.
Are you seeing the side eye?
We're all graduating soon.
And nothing figured out. The amount of times that we have been asked, what are you doing after graduation? We don't know. We're trying to figure it out. And it's a thing of like, it's not like I'm not putting in the effort. I really am. But it's just, we're so lost.
Yeah.
And it's so naive of us to think of this. Because we're either told it or seen it, but it's this like myth or just like a, I don't want to say
no one really tells you the, you know, no one shares what actually happens when you're graduating, especially when you're like in your teens or your middle school, whatever it is, and when you're thinking about university and stuff. No one tells you how it actually feels when you're graduating, how there's so many different options, so many possibilities, and you have no idea, and you have to kind of explore all of these. And that brings me to an article that was released by Jeffrey Arnett from the University of Maryland College. And he talks about how different aspects or factors affect adulthood. So that could be culture, passions, circumstances, etc. And he terms this phase as the emerging adulthood. And the way that he defines it is a period characterized by exploration and examining life possibilities. And it doesn't matter what age you are, because people go through their emerging adulthood phase at could be any age, depending again on all of these factors. And I think it's very interesting to see how, like, you know, I always think of how someone brings it up here and there on social media, how the first season of Friends, they're all like in their mid-20s and they still have nothing figured out. You know, they're all in different stages of their life. That's a great representation of how your 20s is. Like you said already, like, you know, people will be doing different things in their 20s, and that is the whole point behind this research. And another one in relation to jobs is it's a straight road to the corporate world. And an extension of this myth is that internships are easy to find and come paid. I don't know who's lying
I want to
to
find
us.
this person, whoever made this myth, and we'll have a one-on-one conversation.
Exactly.
You will be worked and you will not get paid for it.
Yeah.
Guys, for those of you who are our younger audience, have the lowest of expectations when it comes to internships, because you can get extremely lucky with a paid internship, with a good corporate field, with a good environment, but the large majority of the time it's the complete opposite.
Yes.
Where for the good internships, for the ones that are big names or recognized or will give you, like, will benefit your CV and your curriculum, will not come
No.
paid.
Actually, there's data that backs this up. There's a survey report from NACE, and they said that over 40% of internships remain unpaid. Over 40%. I think this is from 2022, so the numbers could have gone higher. But that was stated out of 2022. But then they did say that over 70% of employers offer full-time jobs after the period of internship. So all hope is not lost. And I think that, it's just important to remember that you have to kind of cut yourself some slack.
Yeah.
And you're in your 20s and you're in your emerging adulthood phase.
Yeah.
You have time to figure things out. It's fine.
I think one of the things that I've seen and I've heard even from my friends or my parents is the thing of you're in your 20s, and for the most part, not always, and it differs from person to person, but for the most part, you're at a stage in your life where you can make the highest, like the most risky decisions without having to sacrifice as much. When you're older, you have a lot more responsibilities, financial, economic, whatever it is. You have a lot more. Right now, we don't have as many. Again, every case is different.
Yeah.
But have this flexibility to try and do, and it's extremely terrifying, especially when we have all these myths in our heads, and when they're not only there, they're ingrained. But you have to try, guys. If we don't try, we'll never know. And trust me, we're still learning. We're not professionals.
Yeah, we're just speaking from experiences and what we've heard. And the last myth is, we already touched up on this, maintaining relationships will be easy. We talked about this extensively in our last episode.
So go
check it out.
Yeah. But, and Jovia mentioned a point that adult friendships are hard. And adult relationships are hard, especially if you have long distance friendships and relationships. Those are hard to manage. I don't want to get too much into it because we've already touched up on the topic enough, I think. But I also want to, just point out that if you're living abroad or starting a new life somewhere new in a new setting, once you find a group of people that you truly feel comfortable with, then let go and let them in. And because it can be a lot of help, especially if you're living abroad away from family and your normal settings that you were used to. It can be so comforting if you just let these people in as well and kind of make a second family in a new place.
Yeah, but that's gonna be again an entire other episode.
But yeah, do it. But that, I think we can take a short break.
Yep. Welcome back. We're back.
Yes.
So, now the next topic, which something that I want to talk about a little bit, something that you guys have also touched upon a little bit so far, is just the overall idea of managing expectations. And we mean societal expectations as well. I think there's almost a minimum and a maximum age for everything.
Yeah.
Society has said it, even though we don't really want to conform to it. It's there, and it's an unsaid rule of sorts where everyone starts doing it at this age. like, or graduate by like 23. Like, have your first job, have your first driver's license by this age, this and that. There's like a constant pressure for like all of these things, and it's very societal, and it's also almost like it puts you up against each other and then puts you in this rat race of sorts of like very cutthroat and unforgiving rat race of sorts. But then again, I think here, like the girls have already said, it's important to like remind yourself that it's okay to like stop in your tracks sometimes and like take a minute, take a breather, reassess your priorities. Because as we have also previously said in other episodes, people change with time. Your expectations of yourself and your priorities change. So it's okay to sometimes not want the same things that you wanted a while ago. And then to like, with your new expectations, like recuperate and rearrange. But in terms of like recuperating and rearrange, is there anything like in particular that you guys, like any assumption that you had about like your 20s that like got shattered, as in like not an expectation like shattered, but like something that you thought, oh, this will just naturally come to me when I'm in my 20s, but then it just hasn't happened?
I think for me it was definitely a job. I had so many high expectations for myself and high hopes of like, I'm gonna go to university and I'm gonna enjoy my first semester and I'm gonna start looking for a job and then I'm gonna nail a job and get an internship and then I'll do this, I'll do that. I could not literally get a job for over a year and a half because of visa. Because I was not legally allowed to work because my visa was just strictly for student visa. And then later on, it was, no one's gonna take a second year student. They don't want us. They really don't, especially if you're an international student and if you don't speak the local language proficiently, or if you just simply don't speak it, they're not gonna even look your way for that. And now going into the last stretch, it's such a huge pressure and huge weight that just lays on your chest in like, I didn't do as much as I should have, or I'm not doing enough, or I'm not this enough, or this, that, XYZ. And for me, that is it. The job market is it.
Yeah. I think I for me it was the same thing. Because like also like a lot of people associate like moving abroad and you'll find a part-time job and yada yada yada, like so there's so much of like expectation that I placed on myself and also from other people to just find a job easily. But there's challenges that come with it and a lot of unexpected challenges that you don't really think about when you expect to find a job. I think, yeah, same.
Yeah. I also agree with you guys. Like, I literally have the same thing. Like, internships and jobs. And, like, it's almost like it's the biggest scam of your early 20s. That, like, you're going to come and you're going to find a job and it's going to be perfect. But to not be overtly pessimistic, or maybe to be a little bit, it's not just us. The job market is pretty much in quite a huge crisis. And I feel like you hear about it, like especially on social media, it's almost like an echo chamber, and it's all I hear of like people being like, I'm 21 and I'm just graduated from university and I've never had an internship and I don't have any job offers. Where it's like people talking about how they open up their email and it's, I'm sorry to inform you, but you are either underqualified or you're either overqualified or you're not who we're looking for. And there's like a list of just rejections. But believe it or not, it's pretty much the case with everyone right now. And I actually came across this Reddit forum, which basically said, anyone else freaked out by the job market? And it was just people replying to this like thread going, no, it's not just you, it's everyone, it's me too. Like, I've been out of university for 2 years and I've not had a job yet. Which is nerve-wracking to hear as somebody who's graduating in a year. But that's the reality for a lot of people and a lot of people around the world. And I was actually a little bit curious as to like, why is this happening? Like, why does it feel like suddenly nobody's hiring anybody? And there may or may not be a few reasons to this. And I actually found this really curious article in the Atlantic by Roger Karma, which basically explains that the job market is not dry, it's not dead, it's frozen, which basically means that people are not leaving or quitting jobs or changing jobs because of the uncertainty of the world today. And another reason is like fact of like COVID happening and all of that, kind of like the whole working from home thing becoming more popular. People hiring people from companies hiring people overseas to do jobs, to do more corporate remote jobs. So it's very nerve-wracking and it creates a lot of fear. I would really recommend to read the entire article. That is why, a little bit of at least why this uncertainty is there. But this sort of like not being hired, but again, a lot of it also has to do with the myth of the fact that it's all gonna be perfect.
It's gonna be perfect, and it isn't. And I think it's so important to acknowledge and to see this different aspects of where the current corporate or job fields are turning and looking as a form of reassurance. And I also find it very interesting because so frequently it's our parents or family or older people in our life who will just constantly look down and be like, oh, you Gen Zs, you guys are just putting excuses, you guys are just making up excuses, like it's, when I was your age, I already had this job, or when I was this, I was already doing this, or but why don't you just open up a business, why don't you just do this, why don't you just do that? And I think it's reassurance for all of you out here hearing us out, the fact that it's okay. They lived in a completely different time.
It was $5 to own a house. Leave me
alone. That's what we always say. It's like, guys, we should have had we're in kindergarten, we should have invested in Apple. So
people say like, I was like, I should have learned Python while I was in my mother's womb.
Yeah. Like we should have done that, guys.
But obviously jobs are not the only things. There's a lot of other things like we previously mentioned, like managing friendships and relationships, traveling, sometimes it's almost like you're expected to do these certain things to be happy. Now, and this is like a saying that's like a little bit like overused, and it's everyone says it, but then like what does it really mean? It's living life to the fullest. I think I have a bone to pick with this saying. Like, I have a few things, because like it could mean different things. To some people, living life to the fullest could mean security, could mean financial security, and having enough financial security to the point where you can do everything that you enjoy doing, be with everyone that you enjoy being with, while being secure financially. To other people, it could mean freedom in other sense. So it's a very sort of loose term, and it could mean a lot of things. It's very subjective. But I think when it comes to the saying living life to the fullest, in this context, happiness almost is only happiness if you can show other people that you're happy. Because the happiness that you can't show, it does not count. Because if you're not traveling the world, if you're not having 5 hobbies, and if you're not having your best wardrobe, you are not living life to the fullest, because you don't look like it. So I think it's a very complicated saying, and I want to know you guys' opinions. What do you guys think about this saying?
I think I agree with you. It's so overused and overplayed, and it's so ambiguous. It means completely different things to many people. And for me, at least, and that's something that I've said, and it's a quote from Emilia Pesqueira, who is a Mexican self-help journal writer. I don't really know fully how to describe her because she does a lot of different things. But she said in her podcast and a bunch of other things, she always says, Quiero vivir haciendo todo con amor, which means I want to live doing everything with love. And that, to me, is living life to the fullest. That, to me, it's not, going dirt biking and hiking and doing a marathon. It's not, being the best singer or the best podcaster or anything of the sort. It's just simply doing the things that I want to do with love and with heart and with intention. They can be as mundane as reading a book or going out for a walk or looking around the city or going to get a cup of coffee.
Yeah.
Doing my homework, doing my thesis can be the most basic things ever. But to me, living life to the fullest is doing everything that I do with love.
Yeah, that's a very good point.
I was gonna say the same thing, because I don't agree with the general notion of this quote, so to say, because it's just people, again, society placing a lot of expectations to people to live their life to the fullest. It's not easy to live your life to the fullest because challenges come. That's life is a roller coaster, and it's not easy to do that. But I also think, in a way, this quote is meant to just give hope to people who are going through these challenges, to as a reminder to keep doing what they do love, and not necessarily to be the happiest in the way that they can show off, but be the happiest and live life to the way that they are the happiest for themselves, and do what they love and do it with so much of passion and intention, like you said. And that's what this saying resonates with me. Like, that's how it resonates with me.
Yeah, that's almost exactly what I was going for as well. I do agree that oftentimes when if I Google live life to the fullest, it's like you said, it's someone bungee jumping, skydiving, going for a deep sea dive, and it's just like things don't actually need to be that deep. You can be shallow.
Deep sea life.
See that? You see that? But you can be shallow, which I feel like it's allowed.
Yeah.
Like oftentimes, like you can just sit in your room and read a book and be happy.
Yeah.
And that's okay. Like oftentimes, if you're happy, you have to look happy. And I don't understand the logic there often. It's like you can be shallow, you can just do mundane things, like you said. And it's as long as you find joy in something as mundane as like being curled up on your couch with your pet, watching the same movie you've been watching since 2003. It's okay. I've not been alive in 2003. But again, it's okay still to do it, to do those mundane things. And again, to reiterate that like not everything has to have a deeper meaning. Things can be shallow, and that's okay.
Yeah.
And again, like it comes to the point of like, is this too much of an optimistic perspective? Like, why oftentimes it'll feel like, why is the internet trying to suffocate me with this like over optimistic perspective? Like, the motivation is great, it's good, it's important to feel that sense of motivation, but oftentimes sayings like this, especially when it's backed up with the dramatic music and shots of people literally jumping off a spaceship is a little bit dramatic. Let me be. But I think again that brings me to my like concluding point of how like the bar just keeps going higher. The bar of like what you need to do to be happy
literally in space
keeps going higher.
It is
Literally.
in space, guys. I think also the fact that even if it's something mundane, it's really important to link back to the whole thing that we discussed earlier of challenges. And everyone is going through their own different thing. You don't know what is a challenge for other people.
Yeah.
You don't know what sort of mundane activities are more difficult for some to face. If there's times where it's just difficult to even step out of the house, to even step out of your apartment, of your place. And it's so important to remember that as mundane as things may seem, stepping out of your comfort zone can be very different for a lot of different people. And it's important, like we said, to explore and to learn more. And we're at a stage where we're able to take a lot of risks. Doesn't mean that we have to live on the edge constantly and want to jump off a spaceship.
And I also would like to preface like this and like everything we've said so far by saying that it's easy for us to like sit here on a couch and be like, live life to the fullest. but it's much harder to put all of the things we've said into practice,
Mhm.
to like manage these expectations, and to like maybe even for a second to stop comparing, because it's pretty much impossible, like you've mentioned before. It's a conditioning since like you've been born. There's a hierarchy of how kids in kindergarten, who knows their ABCs best, that's where it
Mhm.
begins. So it's a very hard habit to let go of. But some of it is constructive, some of it is destructive. And I think we've mentioned mostly the destructive stuff as well. Um, but again, I think I would like to just tie it all together by prefacing that it's easy for us to talk about, but it's very
Yeah.
hard to put into practice. But it will be definitely very fulfilling when you sort of look at the larger picture of things
Mhm.
and realize that it's sometimes okay to not be the best
Mhm.
version. You know, you can work, you can be working, you can be trying to get there, but sometimes you'll not always be the best version of yourself, I think.
And just know that you don't have to know what you're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we're all figuring it out, and it's okay.
You're in the different stages of your life, different people, and so it's important to remind yourself that you don't have to compare yourself to your classmate or your colleagues or your friends, because everyone is going through their own things and everyone is in different stages of life. Cut yourself some slack. It's gonna be fulfilling, and you're gonna have a lot of fun living in your 20s as well, meeting new people and making new friends and everything. But of course, there's challenges, and we've talked about a lot of those right now. But yeah, I think that pretty much sums up this episode 21 in 2025
Yeah.
and how it's going. But thank you guys so much for listening, and thank you for all the support that you've given us for the past few episodes as well. We really, really appreciate it. We'll see you next week, and come knocking by whenever you want. We're here. Bye.